the LCBC car show, and that was the first one that he went to
Wow.
in 22, and it won first place. And he's like, I was like, come on.
Yeah.
You know, and he sent me a picture. You could see our text. He's like, I was like, come on, you didn't, shut up. You didn't win anything, you know, whatever. He's like, no, I really did. Like, you know, and then it started from there. I could show you in the house, I could show you all the stuff that he's brought home with it.
Oh, I'm sure. Just when
He
I saw it,
he
I
has
was
a
like,
couple trophies, and I'm like maxed out in there. I'm like, Dad, you can't keep taking it to the same shows because he keeps winning first place, and you're gonna embarrass some people, make some people mad. And he's like, well,
no,
that's not my problem. I'm like, but see, so I learned all this stuff from him.
yeah,
You know, this was all like his mentality.
Makes
It was
sense.
All basically make it work. So anyway, I grew up not on a farm, but right behind one, and my dad was always, we have no money. Let's just fix it, make it work. We need a new one. Well, there is no new one. Make it work. Make it work. And I'm like, well, it's completely broken, whatever. Make it work. And that was the whole mentality. It was like, well, there's no rules to this. You know, just make it work. So that's why when you said you're a fabricator, I can make it work. I am a very loose term fabricator. I can make it work. And that's what this was all about. And it kind of turned into this whole big thing because it started out, it sat in my shed down below for like 4 years before I touched it. So I was doing all these other projects, flipping stuff, and you know, I was making money, whatever, you know, and then it was one project in particular set me off, and I don't know, maybe I'm just emotional, but I built this car, this turbo Corvette, and I redid the whole thing. I used all the good clamps, you know, I soldered all of the connections. This thing, I spent all winter underneath it. I didn't have the lift, I didn't have this finished like you see it now. And this kid came and bought it. He was 17. I was apprehensive about it, but he had cash. He gave me the money. Went down an hour on the way home and towed the car. Smashed it to bits. Rolled it 5 times. A Corvette. How do you even roll a Corvette? I mean,
Probably doing a good amount of speed, I guess.
it was a turbo Corvette, and it was a pretty big turbo. And I told him, I said, don't do anything until you get home, because the tires were bald and I was out of money. So I was like, take it or leave it, you know. But get it home and then.
17-year-old kid, you couldn't wait,
Yes. So, I mean, I was so mad about this. It was like somebody bought something from me. Yes, I got my money. All my friends were like, what do you care?
But you put your passion into something.
Right. It's like somebody.
Yeah.
It's like if you were to do a painting and then somebody were to buy it from you and then light it on fire in front of you.
Exactly.
And I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. I sold everything. I sold all the projects, whether they were done or not. I had a lot of jet skis and boat stuff, and I sold everything. And I was like, I'm going to do something for me. And I'd been looking at buying a car because I missed driving cars. I was having trucks and stuff, and I could not find anything that I liked. I drove Corvettes and CTSV, whatever. You know, I just didn't. Nothing that somebody else had it.
Yeah.
Everybody always had.
You want something unique.
Right.
Put your personality on.
So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go after this truck. So I just brought it up here, and the picture album sort of shows it from the beginning. I just laid all the pieces out. I had no idea what I was doing. I did everything in this truck like 10 times. And I'm being serious. I screwed this thing up so bad, so many times.
Part of the fabrication process is
right. Well,
putting the jigsaw together.
Especially
and then refining it.
As ridiculous as it sounds, I've always worked on stuff and been able to fix whatever, you know. But a lot of these pieces are already made by somebody, they're already manufactured. So all you have to do is figure out where it goes. It's like a puzzle. This, everything had to be made and formed. I had problems that I couldn't go online and just go, who had this same problem? You know, you read forums or whatever, figured out wiring, whatever. This thing was like, I have this problem and nobody can solve it but me. I lost sleep over it. Like there was times I got mad at it and I didn't touch it for a week. But you just keep, what am I going to do? Quit? Everybody told me I was going to quit. They're like, you're not going to finish this.
Sometimes that's a fool to the fire.
Right.
Sometimes.
He's like, you're never going to finish this. My dad even was like, come on. You're not going to do this whole thing.
I'm finishing now just to spite it, basically.
Right. So I just hammered away. And then COVID happened right after I started on it. So I had all this time. It was the best Christmas I ever had. I got text messages, but I was here all day by myself just hammering away at this thing. So I just I moved the motor mounts like 4 times. After they were already welded on the front, like forget just tacking and setting things. I'm like, oh, that's good. It'll be good.
It's full send and then after that, back off.
I tore this truck apart for the first 3 years afterwards.
Right.
Every winter. Like, I made it so it was drivable.
Yeah.
And then I tore it all apart and fixed whatever I had to. It was an automatic the first year I had it out, and it was super boring. My dad loved it because he drove truck all his life. And he's like, I don't know, if I never have to shift another gear, you know.
Well, yes. 50,
And I was like, well, yeah, but it's my truck and I want to slam gears. I want to break stuff. So he was upset, but I put a 6-speed in it. And that was a learning curve too. Like, this is a 71 block or a 70 out of a motorhome, I think. And it's basically factory stock on the bottom end. And we put rings in it, and the bottom end, like, it's just basically stock windage tray, you know. And then the wild cam, and the second year that I had it out, I put aluminum heads on it, the tunnel ram, the carburetors, all that stuff, and then the 6-speed. The 6-speed's from a 2011 Camaro SS. I should have just bought a T56 Magnum.
That would be an easier route.
Yes, because the second gear was hammered out of this one, and you can't just call Tremec and give them a part number. They'll be like,
yeah,
you know.
we want the whole one.
Yeah, they're like the worst service ever. The guy laughed at me, like actually laughed at me. So I had to go to GM, and I had this patient kid that, you know, was nice enough to look up the car. I didn't have a VIN number. You know how you need a VIN number. I didn't have the VIN number or anything. I just...
This is the car I want.
Right.
Help me get it. Yeah.
So he looked up a random car, and he was like, all right, there's 4 different transmission ratios in this, and you know what? He figured it out, and he sent me the gear. It was like $120, and I got it. I turned the old one into a cup holder, so it worked out. But it was a nightmare to line that motor up with that trans. Everybody's like, you know, I had to make special dowel pins because I had special spacers. The clutch is from like a 78 Camaro. That's the only one that would fit because it was small enough. It was a nightmare. You know, I had to index plate the whole thing. It took like 3 months just to line it up and get the right dowel pins. Like, I had to figure out.
That's part of the challenge, isn't it?
It was totally worth it. This thing shifts like butter. I love it. I slam gears all the time. And actually, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, I actually twisted this. It had traction bars on it. I twisted and broke one of the springs from slamming gears, and I had to put a 4-link under it because I was like, how does that even, like, behind, between the shackle and the axle, I broke that. And I was like, what? I didn't think it was that wild, you know. It has those Viper wheels in the back, so they're super wide, but my dad's like, it's 440, you know, those nasty, so. And I do. I, like, don't think for a second that I just, yeah. I mean, I might putz around a little bit, but when I'm by myself and there's nobody else around and I'm on a back road or something, I hammer the shit out of this thing. And like, it's seen upwards of $7 grand. The stock motor. And I was certain so many times that
was it.
Well, I was gonna come down like to idle and it was gonna be misfiring, you know, or something, band a push rod, whatever. Nope, just sit there and just run normal. I'm like, geez, this thing is relentless. So I run the crap out of it. It loves it.
So what is the cab?
The cab is a 46. Everything you see, it's a 46 Dodge pickup. It's all, yeah. There's another cab right there. I'm actually in the middle of another one right now.
I saw the frame outside.
Yeah. So that's a 1500 frame. This is sitting on a 2004 Dodge Dakota frame.
Okay.
Hence the Viper wheels, because that weird 6-leg pattern they love. But yeah, I have a 42 Co that I'm working on and I'm trying to make work. And the fenders are trash and everything. I hate body work. I'm not a body man. I'm just making it work. But this wasn't like everything was pretty much here. There wasn't a whole lot of repair that I had to do. This was, everything else was just kind of, there's a lot of dumb sarcasm, evil laughing in it while I was doing it. It's, I don't know. I mean, everybody's, I just kept adding stuff, you know, and just making stuff you throw away, you know, cams, you know, chain, whatever, stuff that's no good. A lot of that big chain is New Holland drive chain from an LS 170. My buddy worked at Messick's for years, and he's like, "Do you want this chain?" I was like, "Yeah, I want that chain." Like, you can make anything with chain. It takes a lot longer to do it that way, but
it gives the end result.
Right, like I needed a spacer because the air filters wouldn't fit. Or was choking out with the smaller air filters. And, you know, I could have just put a block under there, put spacers there, but I was like,
this is more creative. More
right, it's more fun. So everything I did and used was all like push rods and, you know, whatever you need to do.
That, when I first saw the truck, I was like, oh, it's a rat rod. And then I got closer and started looking and started seeing you use different camshafts and rods and testers, and I'm like, somebody's got some artistic sense of humor with this, because
It's just, it's a lot of dumb stuff, and me just holding it up and go, yep, that'll work, and that's just kind of my speed, you know. I always loved to build a car, but I'm not meticulous like that. With certain things I am, but like some of those guys will spend 10 years doing, you know, the body on the car. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't have the patience for that. And I can never get it right, you know. It's like, I just need it to be kind of good there, you know, to make it work. And I knew I was going to drive this and beat it around, and I couldn't let myself get upset if I, you know, scratched it, or, you know, I've taken it to Carlisle, the Chrysler Nationals. It was dusty and there's bugs all over the front of it, and it still won first place. I'm like, what is wrong with these people? Like, why do they? It's just different. That's all it is. All the cars, you line them all up, and they're all the same color.
Yeah.
You know, they're all what they're supposed to be, and that's fine. There are people that love that stuff, and I love that stuff too.
I appreciate it, but
that gives me anxiety if I own something like that. I freak out.
Randy has I think it's a Nova he built from the ground up. He won't take it anywhere because he spends 5 hours a day waxing it and polishing it. He doesn't want sticky fingers on it.
If that's what he likes to do, and that's his speed, right?
I like stuff that you can drive, and like you said, get a bug on it. And
I've used this for so many different things. I put a bike in the back. My dad wanted to take it to a show, the one beginning of this year, and it was really early, and I didn't want to make him get up at 5 a.m. So I was like, well, I'll bring a truck over you. He's like, well, how are you going to get home? I don't want to drive you the whole way home because he's half an hour away. And I was like, well, I'll put my bike in the back, and, you know, I'll bring it over to your house, and I'll just ride the bike back. So I had these Ruckuses that I used down at the bay, and I was going to take one of those, and I was like, I don't want to ride 30 mile an hour the whole way home. Freaking sucked. So I have an 07 R1, so I put that in the back, and I'm like, well, is it going to handle it? I did put bump stops on it, and it's, you know, that's like 450-pound bike. I put it in the back, it loved it. Drove normal, didn't vibrate, nothing. I was like, this is, I expected something to be not right, but I could still run 80 on the highway, nothing, we didn't care. I was like, still does truck stuff. That's that one picture on my Instagram with the bike. And I was like, I use it all the time for that stuff. I literally go get groceries with it because it's, you know, just a short little run, and it's fun to drive, and there's always some kid running up and, you know,
Well, as an adult, we go get it too. But.
Yeah, I mean, they love it, and everybody thinks it's so strange that I just drive it all the time and just take it here and there, and whatever, leave the keys in it, whatever. And I'm like, well, if you can figure out how to start it, go for it. I have a certain sequence to do it, and it's not the key, obviously. So, you know, it's like, if you can figure it out, go for it. You know, I've had all kinds of friends get in, and they're like, how do you make this thing run?
I'm not telling you. That's a trade secret.
So, because it doesn't really have a security system, everybody's all about security now. Yeah. I'm like, well, I guess somebody could just walk off with it. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, every little thing on this thing has a dumb little story to it. And it's...
You want to show us some of the dumb little stories?
So, oh my gosh, where do I start?
What about the wrench?
The what?
The wrench.
Oh, that was... So my dad used to bring me a box of parts like almost every Sunday. He'd come over and we'd hang out. And he would always bring me parts and stuff. And, well, I needed a mount for the reservoir. That power steering pump. So this says, no, the reason I used this frame is it had bracket pinion steering, no box. So I wanted it to drive nice. And the original Dakota reservoir was attached to the sidewall. It wouldn't fit, obviously, because it's a little tight in there. So I needed something that was separate. So I was like, well, I'll just go to the junkyard. I went to the junkyard and just got at Tri-Town, it's right down the road here. And I went and got one off a 2014 Dodge Caravan, and just, I'm like, how do you know that's going to work? I'm like, I don't. I'm just going to put it on and spin it and see if it works. And it works, so whatever. If it doesn't work, you go get another one.
Yeah.
So I had to custom make the headers because I had the original headers on it. They were truck headers. They hung too low, and I wanted to ride it low, and they kept dragging everywhere. And I was backing off a trailer in Ocean City, and it actually bent the header up into the motor mount, melted the motor mount while I was there, and then sagged the motor to one side. It was a whole thing. It was awesome. So I made my own headers, and that was another winter project, because I clearly have to tear the whole front end off because somebody did not design this to be worked on. There was no thought into that when it was done. So, yeah, I mean, every little dumb thing. Like this is a corkscrew from an adjustable wrench.
Okay.
And it's just because it fit in there. The throttle cable's from a Gixxer 750. That little butterfly flap on the bottom, it opens and closes for more torque or whatever mid-range. And it's just because it had these angles, and
It had what you
I'd
need.
taken it off another bike and I saved everything like my dad does, and it just worked out. So the chain, obviously use chain for everything.
Yeah, so you got chain in the front as well there.
Yeah, there used to be a cross member up there, and
The chain figures.
well, it was too big, so I did the chain. I had the chain. After I mocked everything up, I could not. I realized that there was no radiator that was going to fit in the front.
Yeah.
Of this, and I knew I needed a lot of cooling, so I didn't know. I was this was a guess. Like I didn't know anything, about cooling systems, or whatever. It was just like bigger is better, more volume.
The more you get, the better.
Right. So I took the radiator out of that second gen Cummins out there and put it in the back and just sort of held it up, and I was like, this should be enough, So it ends up this system, and then when I ran the pipes back, I upped them to 2-inch pipes to run all the coolant for more volume. So the whole system is actually like 10.5 gallons. So
Wow.
I have all this volume, and
This thing's not getting hot anytime soon.
right, and it didn't. It actually worked out. I run a 160 thermostat in it, and it runs right around 170 in the summer when it's really, really hot. I sat in traffic for a while. I sat in the boardwalk down in Ocean City for 3 hours, and the biggest problem I had was my leg stopped working because of that freaking clutch. So.
That's the joy of a manual, though.
Yes, my dad's like, "Are you?" And then he gets his 2 cents in.
Yeah.
Oh, you wanted it to be manual. You wanted it to be stick.
Yeah, me and my wife were looking at buying another car because one of our lost the engine, and I'm like, I want to buy something with a manual transmission. She's like, again, you're getting older. I'm like, I just need to do it while I can.
You need something to do
Yeah.
while you're driving. Like it's just boring, And
It's that feeling of being connected to the vehicle that I like. So.
this catch can was an afterthought. That's actually a small block Chevy sleeve, and the lip for the sleeve is on the bottom. It was supposed to be on the top. And when I was working on the bench, I didn't think about that. I had it flipped upside down, and it was like, it's just a catch can. And these are actually Sea-Doo pistons.
Oh wow!
And they still have the rings on them and everything. I blew up a Sea-Doo, dropped a valve on the river, and it's a 3-cylinder. So the second one's on the bottom, the third one's the license plate light that's all mashed up. That's the one that dropped the valve. So they just so happen to fit in this small block Chevy sleeve, and like.
I was going to say that's almost perfect sizing right there.
Yeah, I just turned it into a catch can, so it's whatever, and it works because the crankcase ventilation is sort of coming back into the cab, so that gets a little irritating. You can smell it up, but the windshield still leans out. It still works. The scoop, I use the scoop all the time in the summer.
Does it have any air conditioning, or is it?
No, it's got
just windows down and.
Yeah, it's got 1940s air conditioning. It's that scoop and the front windshield tilts out, and it does really wash out the cab.
Yeah.
If you're going.
If you're moving, yeah.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Now, when I drove it to Carlisle, it's probably the worst time because it's hot. It's like July. The floor starts to get hot after a while because you have the exhaust under there, you have the coolant running under there. I put my equivalent to shields to try to keep the heat down, which is just license plates because they work good as shields, and
why not? Right?
I have a whole bunch of them.
free.
So, right. So, what else?
I see you've got a servo manifold for the brake booster.
So I needed a spacer, and I was just going to build a box. And I was like, well, that's boring. And actually, that is a wrong order from that turbo Corvette. They sent me the wrong one. I was going to send it back, and they're like, no, just keep it. We'll send you another one. So I had it up there in a bag. It was brand new, and I was like, well, this would be a great spacer. I'm not going to use it for anything else.
I love the creativity behind it.
So it's, I mean, it's just whatever you want it to be. There are no rules.
What's the deal with the John Deere boxes on the back?
So I was walking through the junkyard up in New Ringgold with my dad, and he was like, "You should take one of those planer boxes." I'm like, "Dad, they're green. They don't match the truck at all." And he's like, "Oh, I thought it was supposed to be a rat rod. It doesn't matter." You know, because.
Sounds like a dad.
So I was like, "All right, okay, fine." So I got two of them with the seed boxes, and one's battery box, and the other's fuel. Batteries in there, and fan control, all that. And this wasn't actually enough at first. The first year I had it out, it would barely start the truck because you have quite a distance between there and there. And it is like, I think it's like 10.5 to 1. It would barely do it. And so I put another battery under here. I just hung it, and that was enough. So now I have 2 batteries in it. And that other one's a toolbox and access to the fuel tank. And believe it or not, I thought those might fly off, but we did a little test. I drove it. I've been driving it. It just turned 7,000 miles.
Wow.
And nothing's come off. These boards aren't even tied down. Like, they're just in there.
I was just noticing that they look loose, and
Yeah.
see the suspension underneath.
Yeah. So there's the other battery.
There's your 4-link.
Like, I just used everything and anything. Like, this little strap that's from a jet ski.
And your tie downs are.
Those are small box Chevy caps. That's the only thing they're good for.
I love it. It's perfect.
But it's, like I said, it's just whatever you want it to be. As long as it works, it doesn't matter.
I'm going to guess the bed was extended.
Yes. So when I first did the mock-up, the bed was a certain size. And the frame, it was from an extended cab Dakota.
Okay.
And I actually wanted the bed because I want to use it for truck stuff. That was the plan. So I was concerned I was going to lose 2 feet here, or 18 inches or so, because I put the radiator back here. So I was like, well, I'll just extend it and integrate everything in and keep this down just so you don't see it from the side that much. And yeah, and then I just ended up cutting them at which I thought was a good spot, but it turns out after I did it, I realized, oh, I have to do the running boards also, and yeah, it just turned into a whole thing. And then it's like, well, do I pretty it up and make it nice, or just leave it? And I ended up just leaving it. Like, this top piece is just a pipe, just to match
It matched the radius.
the curly view there. Yeah. And
Is that the reason you went with the mesh on the side, is to extend?
so that was the same guy that did the pinstriping.
Okay.
He was like, dude, I was talking about spacing, because I always wanted it to, before the frame, before all that, I wanted it to make it wider, because these trucks are so skinny. If you look at a factory one.
Yeah.
It's like, I want it to be wide and low, and, like, remember the Grand Am, like, big,
Exactly.
wider is better,
Yeah.
the whole commercial. I always thought that was funny, so I was like, I wanted to give it, like, this dark and ominous, NASCAR-y, retired, somebody left it in the backyard for years, and I just kind of, like, got it going. So, I told him I wanted to, I was just going to use sheet metal, and he was like, dude, you should use spreaded metal. I was like, how am I going to do that stuff? How do you even work with that? So he's like, buy a 4x8 sheet of it, and cut it in slivers, and I'll take it to work. He works at Peckley Trailer, and I'll put it in the brake and make channel out of it, and then you form it to the fender. I'm like,
That's perfect idea.
so I was going to use channel anyway,
Yeah.
because it's like, the whole idea was with the 40s trucks, is like, well, if the fenders bolt on, it means I can put something in between. And they're not like part of the body, the way that they're shaped like something else. So I was like, I can put something in between, and it won't really make that much difference. It'll still have its body lines. So that was kind of what happened. And yeah, that stuff is absolutely terrible to work with.
I know firsthand.
You touch it with the welder, it just melts, falls apart. I had to make, so these were straight, I had to slice it, and then, like, I basically bolt it to the fender, mark it, slice it, put it back on, bend it, slice it. Oh my gosh, I remember this, just the front end, because I stopped it here, and yeah, you can see where I tried to put it back together. It just went up to here at first. That was the first experiment. And that was like 6 or 7 hours, 8 hours I had just in doing both of these. It was, we can't weld it on the fender, you know, so I didn't want to damage the fender. I didn't want to poke any holes where I didn't have to in the body because it's all like kind of original.
Yeah.
I didn't want, like, that's why you won't see a whole bunch of holes drilled in the dash or wherever I didn't need to. So, because I mean, this is like all but 80-year-old. Yeah, I mean, like the metal, it's like really cool. I love that stuff, you know, that idea. So I didn't want to mess with the body too much because it's like, where do you see body lines like this?
You don't.
It's the coolest thing.
And that's one of the things that jumped out to me when I
Right.
was starting on, because I was like, it's not a Ford and it's not a Chevy, so.
So one of the
Close.
on the front, most of this is the original paint. I did cheat in a couple spots, and you can kind of tell the difference. But this is original. Like you look at the scarring in the paint, you can see it and feel it. It's like
It's got character and.
right, and you can't even like it would be really hard to duplicate that. I thought I would think. Now the front, the little bars had yellow on them, which was terrible. So I didn't care for that. So I just took it off and I was like, I'm just gonna do bare metal and clear it and see, you know, whatever. And I had a certain process that I went after when I did it. It was I would sand it. The only reason that I started sanding it is because COVID happened, and I was like, well, now I have all this extra time to do the paint, because the paint wasn't going to be until last. And I didn't even know how I wanted to do it, what I wanted to do with it. And it turned into like, well, let's just sand it down and see what's underneath. And I started with this door, and as soon as this whole thing came out, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm ready to do the whole truck.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, my arms were so locked up, like, from I hand sanded the whole thing. So I had a certain process that I would do. And then at the end, there's a couple different grades, and then at the end I did a hard cut with a buffer to smooth it out. And I was gonna just flat it like everybody else, or semi-gloss or something. And I was like, you know, that's what everybody does, and it's really hard to clean flat colors.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm just gonna gloss it. And my dad's like, well, it's gonna be dirt in the paint, you know, 'cause you're doing it in the garage stuff. I'm like, I don't care. What do I care?
Yeah.
I just want to clear it so it doesn't rust. So I started clearing stuff, and it started coming out like this, and I was like, well, whatever, you know. It's blurry in some spots.
Matte paint works well for the vehicle.
Right.
Yeah.
So everything just kind of worked out. Like I scratched it here with the floor jack, walking past it in a trailer, and I was like, whatever, you know. Nobody, you know, you don't notice it.
No, it blends in.
It doesn't matter, you know. It's. I did put really heavy bracing underneath these sides. I knew somebody would probably get on and jump on it, so it's really heavy.
See, they're functional, and you've got more chain under the cab too.
Yeah, that was just going to hide the spacing, but you can see where the original cab,
Yeah.
where it used to sit, and how much.
Wider it is.
Right. So.
How wide is it? You have
I think the rear. In the rear, it's just over 7 feet. It's like 8
you say it's got Viper wheels
in
on
the
it?
front. Yeah, these are like 2000 GTS Viper wheels.
Keeping with the Dodge thing.
Yes. Well, there's not a whole lot of options for that 6-lug pattern.
No.
Like, unless you make custom wheels, and this was a budget build, so it's not like, you know, I'm not going to spend $4,000 on rims. So, and they were supposed to not be, you know, too wild anyway. When I first put them on, they were very flashy because they all come polished like this.
Yeah.
So, I took them to the powder coater, and he was like, "Are you
Sure you want to do this?
because they were perfect?" And he's like, "Are you sure you want to coat these? Like, they're fine like this." And I was like, "No, I want them black. They take away from the truck too much
Yeah.
if I left them, you know, shiny." So, because I had them on the truck at first like that, and it's like, "Ah, it's just too much. I want it to be, it ruins my dark and ominous." You know. So,
Had a theme, went for it.
yeah, and it was just kind of. You learn as you go, you know, you start doing stuff, and either it works or it doesn't.
The thing with this is, the more I look at it, the more I see. Like,
Yeah.
just seeing it at the show for 30 seconds or a minute, is one thing, but when you actually start looking at the details.
So my dad's big thing, he always laughs about, he's like, people always walk past it, they look at it, they'll walk around it, and then like 15 minutes later, they'll come back, and they'll walk around it again, and then, 15 minutes later, they'll come back again, and they just keep walking around it, and then they say, I just keep seeing different things, it's like, well, there was a little dumb stuff to do, you just keep adding it. I would sit and look at it for a while and be like, what else can I do? Where can I hide or decor or whatever, just to, blend it in with everything else.
What's the inside of that?
It's all, so it has a different set of seats in it
license
at
plates.
first. So those, my dad was a truck driver for years, and those are all of his
Different
original
tags.
license plates. Yeah.
Wow.
For his trucks. And believe me, I just twist his arm to get them.
Well, I have all her grandfather's tags and her uncle's tags from all their cars.
Yeah, so they're, like even motorcycle plate, that was one of his. And he's like, well, I'm going to use him because he's building the truck now, magically. I'm going to finish mine.
Well, he's got competition now, hasn't he? Is that the build book?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's all the pictures and stuff.
I might have to get you send me something so I can add them into the video for it.
Yeah. What else? Everything was a dumb little thing, like it's.
He's like, we've got the bottle here, the spanner,
Yeah.
holding the
I didn't even know if that was going to
Overflow.
work. I just needed an overflow because there was so much fluid and it would push out,
Yeah.
and then it has to come back. So I just ended up sticking that bottle there. That was for literally for the test drive, and then I ended up it filled the bottle up the whole way,
Yeah.
and then it drained it all out. And I was like, this is perfect. I'm just going to leave it on there. So I built that little harness for it, and it has seemed to work okay so far.
What are the seats out of?
So those seats are from a '96 Toyota Celica.
We have a Toyota car.
And the reason, the bug eye headlights.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had a '91 Celica years ago, and I loved the seats in it. And I saw one, so the whole thing started because I wanted to do the 6-speed. So I did the 6-speed. Well, I had to do away with the push e-brake
Yeah.
to do, for the clutch pedal. I'm like, well, now I need another way to e-brake. Well, I'll do a pull handle. Well, I needed this giant pull handle to be able to make it work with this truck. So, because at the time it was drum brakes, and it seems like so much when you say it out loud, like so much like extra bother. So I was looking around the junkyard for this. Everything now is just like these little
Yeah.
So I found this Celica, and I'm leaning across these seats, and I'm taking this thing out because it had one of these big levers, and I'm taking, the whole e-brake out, and I'm looking. I literally sitting in these seats, I'm like, these are really nice seats, and they're kind of, they're not perfect, but they're a little ripped up, but they're manual.
Yeah.
They're not electronic. So I was like, seats are $20 a piece. I'm gonna get them. So I went back. I took the e-brake out, and then I went back in and got the seats. Because it actually had Ford King Ranch seats in it, and they were fine, but they weren't like bucket seats. They were the mid-row from an
Well,
Expedition.
we're looking at,
So the sides wouldn't really
you need
hold
some
you.
bolstering effect, yeah.
Right. And the backs were really thick. And I didn't think about that, but these, I needed the back to be thick because I'm a little bit taller in order for it to be comfortable. Because you're sitting in it like this, it's not. Now it's definitely a lot better. I've driven it a couple hours and okay. But yeah, they were from a '96 Toyota Celica, and they're like, what made you choose that? I'm like, they were right in front of me and they were
The
cheap.
price was right.
Yeah, $40 for a new pair of seats. So I came home and put them, set them up and put them in. But this thing was bare bones when I got it. There was nothing. It was just, there was no steering wheel, there was no glass, it was just there. So I sat on phone books and buckets and whatever else to try to figure out where I'm supposed to sit. Because naturally you're supposed to sit a lot higher in these trucks.
Yeah.
It's a bench seat. Well, I didn't have any of that stuff and I wasn't going to buy it. And I didn't want it anyway. I want a bench seat. So it was just all improvising and figuring out. And later on, looking at stuff at other people, the way that they did it, I was like, I did it the most absolute longest, terrible way that I could have.
But
But
the results
it's
are
done now,
unique
so-
and they're yours, you know.
I mean, there's things I would change, you know, but it's like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna get all ruffled up, you know, worrying about
You
it. It works.
can, when you build your next one,
Right, now I know what to do.
Yeah.
And that's the whole idea, so, yeah. The center console, so I did away with the pulley brake, as you see, because I upgraded to rear disc. And when I did that, my new pickup has all these new vehicles have a push button
yeah.
e-brake. And I'm like, well, that saves even more space. I'm like, if I could do that cheap enough, I'll do it. So I kept my eye on, I just needed a single piston, you know, rear caliper that was integrated. And I looked on eBay and I found a set of takeoffs off of a brand new like Denali truck that somebody upgraded for $80 for a set of them. So I bought them, made my own brackets. That was a nightmare also. And then, you know, made it work. And then, so I didn't have the module to like,
Control
you
it.
push the button and it just does it for you. I have a switch that if you hold too long, it will blow a breaker.
Oh.
And then you have to reset the breaker. So you just,
Hopefully put the
you do a
brake in
3
the-
count.
Yeah.
Or if the truck starts to roll, if you're rolling, you just pull on it until it stops rolling and like the e-brake's set. My dad doesn't use it because he's afraid he's going to break it. But
So he just drops it in first or second or
yeah,
leaves it
well, that's
there.
how I usually drive it. But if it's on a hill or something, I'll put the e-brake on. But you know, if it's idling somewhere or out in the driveway, like it'll roll away if I don't put the e-brake on. So it could be a pain, but I'm glad that I did it. It saves a lot of space. And
Yeah, because you are limited on space. And
right. And then, well, having him with me all the time, my dad's not overly super dog fan, especially the bigger ones, and he still thinks he's a lap dog. So he would always, you know, if I were in Ocean City or whatever,
Yeah.
and Jarvis is like trying to sit on his lap, well, he can't sit on my lap, and my dad's like, get this thing out of here, you know, so he'll sit down there, and I felt bad. So I was like, well, I'm gonna make a center console that like folds down. And my neighbor redid his baler and gave me all the chain out of it. So that's actually like baler chain that I made the center console out of. And
how's the doggy seat?
yeah, so that's like the center. But I went to the junkyard and found that is the rear seat. You know, that's you get in the rear seat of some of these luxury cars and like
Yeah.
it flips down.
Yeah, center console.
That's what it is. And so
Okay.
it had the little band on it. So I'm like, well, I'll just use the band.
More
And-
pistons.
That little rod that's bent is from a jet ski that hydrolocked, and that's what happens when you hydrolock a motor. It'll bend the rod. Well, I just turned it into a little foot. Because I couldn't have something stick out if it's up.
No,
You know, it just kind of looks.
it's in the way, yeah.
And there's the second gear and I think third gear. As cup holders down below that. But the other reason I liked this, I grabbed this one, is because it had cup holders built into
Oh, there
it.
you go.
Yeah, so those are the gears.
Okay.
Those were the cup holders before, and that just flips down.
So 4 cup holders in a 2-seater car, there you go.
Yeah. So, and then the nice thing about that is it is just kind of, it's kind of open.
Yeah.
Like it's not attached other than that strap, so I can slide it forward. So he usually sits here and squeezes his little butt in between the seats, and he's, you know,
Perfectly happy.
yeah, he's just happy to be around. So it works out, and that was the whole idea. So that shifter, like the actual stick, is from that same Sea-Doo that got hydrolocked. It had 2 hours on it.
I just love the fact that you keep recycling parts.
I mean, what are you gonna do with it? Scrap it? That's all it's worth.
Yeah.
It's a stainless steel rod that like there's a lot of machine work into that, and like time, and if you had to buy one, it'd be super expensive. And I have it right here. I just can't use it for what it's made for.
So do I get creative with it and use it?
You feel better now? That's like his social anxiety thing. He sucks on blankets.
They gotta have a safe space, haven't they? Our boys have a 4-foot box they like climb in, but then people get worried because it's just a wooden box with
Yeah.
a big door.
It's whatever they like, you know. It's
But they stand up our height, look over the top, and people are like, can they breathe in there? I'm like, they could climb out if they wanted to.
yeah. It's where they feel the best.
I like the fact that you got a dog seat in there.
He was the runt of his litter, so He just needs attention from everybody all the time.
Makes perfect sense.
But he doesn't bark,
Hi.
or hardly ever, unless somebody walks in the door. But yeah, he doesn't make noise. He just wants to hang out. And,
He's just a social guy.
yeah, he's really good, very tame. So I just take him everywhere. Some people love to take their dogs, but their dogs don't behave the best, so they, it can be a handful.
Yeah.
And actually, at the show there, that lady that was walking that short dog that looked like him, she was like, "Oh," and brought him up. She went crazy on him, bit him, and he freaked out. So then he's scared.
He's like, I was just looking there to make a friend, and I got bitten.
Yeah, it was a girl dog, and they're usually, I guess, jealous.
Oh.
Good boy. Dog.
He looks so tiny.
He's tiny compared to ours.
He's a little mid-sized dog. My first one was about the same size. He was a bully also. But it was nice, the idea that I could just pick up and carry him if I had to.
Yeah.
I could control him that way. But I don't really need to. You just listen. Really know what I'm doing. So, what else?
Stories are endless.
Yeah, the seat perches in the back are from a Kawasaki Terex that I rebuilt. And I just put a new set of pistons in it, and that's those little tiny pistons. And the small block Chevy rods are in the front.
I like using Chevy rods on this thing.
I mean, it's whatever's available. I have a buddy that has a machine shop that does a lot of vehicle parts, and he would often want to go through his dumpster, so I'd be out there.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, the price of metal these days, I can't blame you.
Yeah. And if it works, it's all good. So, yeah, I mean, every little thing, chain, that was just for decoration. Those bumps are just, I had all this stainless steel pipe from doing the coolant system, and I just cut them in half long ways and just use the halves, just to have
Just to
something.
be something different.
Yeah, instead of
Because
just
you had it, yeah.
a regular cover. But,
Awesome.
yeah, I put little radiators in the front. One's an oil cooler, and the other's a little radiator that I ran off of the heater hoses, just to a little bit extra cooling, because the fans were running all the time, like on the highway and stuff, and I wanted to give them a break. So I put that little radiator in the front, and it's basically, I think that was all. It's a radiator, it's a cooler off of a Jaguar something, and it's the supercharger system, cooling system. And because they had 3/4 inch inlets, so I just did that, and it cooled it down. Like, because at first it would run, it was okay, but the fans were running nonstop, and I didn't want to be completely dependent on the fans.
Yeah.
So, because that could be dangerous, you lose one and the truck would
Yeah,
overheat.
then you're in problems.
Right. So those fans, I actually used that radiator because I had a set of Flex-Lite fans for that truck that I never put on, and then I was like, oh, we'll just use them for this. So it was all stuff that I just didn't know what I was going to do with, but I had laying around a lot. That steering wheel is from my mom's 88 Oldsmobile, like the model 88.
Oh, wow.
It was an 87, 88. And yeah, it was the steering wheel. My dad gave me that column. The column didn't work out, but I kept the steering wheel. And yeah, it's from my mom's original car, and it's like got this navy blue to it. And I smash my fingers on the door all the time with it, but I can't get rid of it.
Can't get rid of
my
it.
mom's steering wheel.
Yeah.
So everything is just a little bit tight, but these are caps from a Dana 60 rear, and it's just enough.
Just enough clearance.
But it's tight.
Yeah.
If you're like turning and not paying attention,
Yeah,
it
you almost
will,
want one of those
yeah,
little knobs on the steering
it'll
wheel.
rock you pretty good.
Yeah.
It drives straight as an arrow, and I drive it all the time, 80, 90 on the highway. Ever since I put that 4-link in, it's great.
It's got the traction.
It really, it's so much easier to adjust as
Yeah.
far as like paint angle and all that stuff. I had to learn about all that. So that's probably what we did first. The visor I couldn't find anything that I liked, and anything that I could find at all for this truck was stupid expensive.
So it almost looks like part of the original hood.
This is actually, you'll never guess what that's from. It is a hood from a car, but not what you would think.
Alright.
And the reason that it's, so this color, as soon as I started sanding down, my dad's like, that's Bayside blue. I painted a lot of that. I know exactly, that's a GM color.
Okay.
He's like, why is that on this truck? I'm like, well, your guess is good as mine. So we're up in New Ringgold, walking through the antique section, which is like going back in history, and there is a Bayside blue Corvette sitting down in the yard. So we're like, we're gonna take something off of it. I'm like, what do I need off of that thing, you know? So we took the hood. It's like $5, you know. And I didn't use anything off of it for the longest time, but it was Bayside blue, you know, in case I needed metal or something. And I ended up, well, when I finished the truck, it just looked really soft. If that makes sense, like really rounded. I didn't like it. I have a big dump truck before. Tracks with a big drop visor on it. I love the way that it looks. Big stainless steel.
So you needed the visor.
Right, so I was like, well, I'm gonna make a big drop visor just like that truck has. So I didn't have anything but a welder. Like I didn't have a torch, I didn't have a bandsaw, I didn't have a real good efficient way to cut metal when I did this truck. So when I started, this was all not even barely insulated yet. So it was, you could see in the pictures in the book. But I had a Sawzall and a grinder, and that's what I used for pretty much this entire truck until the very end bits. And I didn't have the lift. I laid on the floor in this thing. I had to jack it up so many times. I didn't have the forklift. I had to use a cherry picker for everything. It was terrible. Lifting up the cab, I took the cab off and on the frame like so many times. And that cherry picker was like, I'm like standing on the back of it, like trying to make it. I tied my lawnmower to it the one time because it kept tipping forward.
The weight.
Yeah, and it was so rigged, like so rigged. And this cab was actually twisted when I first got it. And the door, the passenger door wouldn't open and close correctly. And I adjusted it, I could not get it right. So I started measuring the cabin to figure out how to make this cab square is a mystery because there's no points, you know, it's like a V.
Yeah, there's no reference, like a regular.
Right, so you can't just like measure. So I forget how I did it, but I tied lag bolts to the garage and my pickup over here or something, and I pulled it straight with ratchet binders and chain, and then I welded a grid on the bottom. So I did it upside down, and it was funny because it looked like a spider web. It was a mess. And my girlfriend at the time came out and she was like, you're gonna die out here. Like, did you ever see those pictures?
Why
You're like, why men live, you know, women live longer than men. And I was like, well, I gotta straighten the cab, honey, you know, what do you want to do? She's like, because it was very sketchy. So the amount of force that you put on something like that, and then you're like there making that metal hot.
Yeah.
And expecting it to just hold and not fly apart.
It'll be fine.
Like you're very trusting with this stuff. So
just keep your head out from underneath the ratchet.
I mean, it worked. I got it straight enough that the doors open and close really nice. So yeah, that was a process. But yeah, the Sawzall and grinder, oh my gosh, it was from work, and I broke one because I used it so much, like the one Sawzall, and my boss was like, "My Sawzall quit on my way." And he's like, oh, just go get another one, you know, whatever. So I got another one, and then I broke that one. I went through blades. I should have kept all of the blades and made a bed out of them, because
that's one that you used.
I cut everything with Sawzall. That's all I had, and a grinder. So it was a process, and then I finally get all the tools and all the stuff now. And, I mean, it works. It's not as much fun.
No, sometimes you lose that feeling of being creative when you get so many tools in there.
Yeah, it's like what you know, you have too many things to choose from. It's,
yeah.
You know, what do I use with
My
this?
son's actually going to school right now, learning to do welding. And one of the things he likes doing is the MIG. He liked the MIG welding, but then he went to take this last couple of months. He's like, I'm just enjoying this. I said, that opens a whole world up in class. You know.
I just learned from doing it on buckets and whatever I need welded. I never really got to play that much with it because it was expensive
Yeah.
to weld. So then when I finally did it at work, I'm, like I said, I'm an excavator, so I've broken buckets and everything else. You start welding heavy, this and that. So everything in this truck is like overdone, over welded, over everything. Reinforced 3 times, just because I just feel like, well, it's no, this ain't never gonna break, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So
That's awesome.
then one of the first times I took it out, it was strange because I remember feeling like, this is like an actual whole another vehicle I have now. Like I didn't even think about it like that. And I actually made it to the end of the driveway and one of the radiator hoses just blew off. So that was my first experience. Because I knew something was gonna happen, I was waiting for it. But after that, I fixed that, and then
The shakedown run to the end of the driveway.
yeah, and I fixed that and drove it down the road, and I was waiting. I mean, it was months waiting for something to happen.
The anticipation.
I'm like, I know who put this together, so I'm not so sure about this and everything. The one thing that did happen, and it wasn't because of a running issue. I went to take my dad for a ride because I was complaining about how the transmission shifted. It was the automatic, and the kickdown wouldn't work correctly. And he was like, "Well, I'll adjust it. Take me for a ride." So I took him for a ride, and we were down on some back road, and I stomped on it, and the little plastic piece that was holding the throttle pedal just like broke. So the truck just went down to idle, and we just coasted to a stop. And I was like, "Okay." So I drove it home, pulling on the cable by hand. So that was interesting.
What does it use for mounting? Is it just all carburetors?
Yeah, it's just those carbs. Everybody's like, "You should put fuel injection on." I'm like, "Well, it'll ruin the."
Feel and everything. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the whole idea behind it is that it's raw.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the ass. It's groggy and upset, and it pops and carries on.
And that's the character.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that. There's no computer systems. There's no. Like, "Oh, I think it runs a little rich." I'm like, "Yeah, it runs way too rich. I can tell you that right now." But I'm not. It runs, so I'm going to let it go. If I baby it, I've driven it down to the bay. My boss's place is like an hour and 20 minutes. If I baby it, it'll only use, I figured it out one time, and this was just like putzing along. I think it only used about 6 or 7 gallons. And that's probably the better part of 50, 60 miles. No, I don't even know what I should say. But it did really well. But obviously I don't drive it like that, so it gets like 2 miles to the gallon. I have to run 93 in it because it's higher compression. But I'm just waiting for it to explode at some point, and it just keeps going. So whatever, I'm just going to drive it till it quits.
I think that's the perfect answer.
I put a hitch on it so I can pull stuff with it. I pulled a jet ski down to the table one time with it.
Just to get extra parts.
Well, I mean, I had it up here, and my buddy drove that Jeep down, and he was like, "Well, I mean, I can pull it." I'm like, "I think it'll be funny if I pull it."
Yeah.
I'm like, pull this jet ski down with this thing, and I pulled it to the gas station halfway down, and the people came over, and they were like, "What are you? Do you take that on the boat ramp? Doesn't it get stuck? Is it?" I'm like, No. It's just, I'm just pulling it down. Like, it's not a big deal. So you overthink it like crazy.
Yeah, this hasn't got much of a rake over angle for the boat ramp.
Yeah, no. You need to be great for that. But, no, I'm exempt from seatbelts and whatever else. I did put a set of seatbelts from that Celica in it, just in case my dad wanted to wear one. But I have not, believe it or not, gotten pulled over in this thing a lot. Like, the first time I got pulled over in it, it was because the cop wanted to look at it.
Yeah.
And he had no complaints. He just wanted to see it.
Yeah.
The second time was my fault in Ocean City. I went around, made a U-turn, and I just got on it in first gear and ran it up to like 4 grand. Which, to me, it didn't seem like much, but I wasn't outside the vehicle. So he pulled in on for me. He was like, "Hey, don't do that." I'm like, "Okay, sorry." That was it. Everybody's like, "You can't go down there." Everybody makes excuses. You can't go down there. You can't not drive around without a hood. I'm like, I've never had any complaints, but I don't drive like an ass down there.
Yeah.
I just putz around, and everybody leaves you alone. So it was a lot. It was a lot of.
I'm actually looking forward to your next build now.
Me too. I have so many ideas that I want to do. And you know, with anybody that's like, oh, you're doing another one? You're gonna do another one? I'm like, yeah, I want to build a whole fleet. Like, it was a lot of fun. I was depressed when I finished this because it was like,
Now what?
Now what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
You know, because it's just the creativity is off the charts. It's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
Make your own rules. And when you can do that with a vehicle, like a newer vehicle's fine. You can buy parts for it all day long,
Yeah.
modify it, make it faster, whatever, and that's great. Everybody has their different speed, you know. But making stuff like some of the stuff that's made and how it worked out, like it's hilarious to me. And it's even more hilarious when people are like, what, why did you do it?
There's no rules, there's your rules.
I'm like, because
I can.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny kind of thing, you know. So
Perfect. Any chance we can hear it run?
yeah, it's not too groggy. But pull it out. It does run. It'll burn your eyes.
Do I move the trash can?
Oh yeah.
I'm going to tell you about that. Can you hear anything?